You know, folks, it's hard being me. It's hard being Waifu Belector, the only fair human on Earth. Because it's not always fun to be honest, it's not always fun to tell the truth. And believe it or not, I always want to say the things that I'm supposed to say. I always want to say the agreeable, likable thing. But I'm not a liar, and those things aren't always right. I really do hate when I have to disagree with the masses. It's uncomfortable, but it happens a lot for me. And it's because of that I've been dreading making this video all year. Because some of this list is agreeable just the way I want it to be, but some of it is not. Just the way you hate it to be. Most of it actually, I think. This was not on purpose, but this turned into a list with a lot of controversial opinions, which I always have on my end of year lists, but not to this degree. Very few games on this list are gonna be where you feel they should be. You'll see what I mean. But if this video doesn't make you too upset, please remember to drop a like and possibly even subscribe. Also, I'll just say I did not play Metaphor ReFantazio. This is a metaphorless list. I'm sure if I played it, it's possible some stuff might have to get lowered on the list, but I didn't play it, so we'll never know. And I reviewed or talked about all of the games I'm about to talk about in previous videos, so if you want full reviews on pros and cons, check out my A Fair Review playlist. I'll put a link in the description. So yes, this is my personal list of what I deem to be the top 10 games I played in 2024, otherwise known as Waifu Belector's Fair List of Great Games. Alright, we're starting with number 10 here, obviously, and it's something you might not be familiar with: Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. Banishers was made by Don't Nod, who made the first two Life is Strange games, among other things. And Banishers is this really good story-driven action RPG, I guess, with God of War-like combat. The combat scenarios, like rooms and enemy types in fights, are well thought out, and the feel of combat, while decidedly less fine-tuned than something like God of War, is still pretty good. But this being a Don't Nod game, the bulk of its strength comes from the writing. Not to discredit its gameplay though, which isn't skimped out on at all, but the writing and story of Banishers is really good. And the best part of that writing to me is in the way that the two protagonists are written. Their relationship is a deep, layered, very genuine feeling one, and it's just a joy to kind of be part of that as the player, I guess. I've said it before, but Red and Antea, the protagonists, are definitely some of my favorite protagonists in recent memory, but the overarching story and some of the smaller optional stories as well are very well written a lot of the time. And the themes of death, ghosts, and the afterlife in this game are really cool and creative. I really wish more people had played this game this year, but it's never too late. Why not play it in 2025? Check out Banisher sometime, it's really cool. My review of it is in my Fair Review of 2024 games video, which is in the playlist I mentioned earlier. But now on to number 9, another game whose review is in the 2024 games video, Dragon Age the Veilguard. Veilguard is a really good game with some oddly unique pitfalls, but let's just focus on the good for this entry. Veilguard is a big, pretty RPG that you can dump plenty of hours into, an emphasis on the pretty, because the game is graphically impressive, has some beautiful environments, and is polished to Kingdom Come. True, it is a very standard affair in terms of being a big fantasy RPG, but it is that polish and presentation that boosts it up a bit. And that is the greatest selling point, because this game offers you what it says: a big fantasy RPG to get lost in and interact with your companions, but without all of the super deep complexities of something like Baldur's Gate. So while Veilguard overall is not as good as Baldur's Gate 3, it is easier to get into and more approachable because it's presenting a much simpler RPG, kinda akin to something that Obsidian might do, but much cleaner and more polished. Veilguard is a great pick up and play a few hours game, just jumping in and progressing your journey a bit every other day or whatever, checking in with your companions and eventually doing their big side quests, which are some of the better ones in the game. I'm not gonna tell you that this is the most mind-blowing or creative game ever, but in a sea of Souls clones and an era of every game competing to be the hardest thing you've ever played, a big, polished, chill, pretty graphics game is easy to find refreshing. So check out Dragon Age the Veilguard if that sounds good to you. Here at number 8, get ready to get mad. It's Black Myth: Wukong. Put the pitchforks down and hold your booze. Yes, Wukong is down at number 8. And although this list is to mostly just talk about the positives of these games and put them in an order, I've gotta mention that despite what you may have heard, this game is pretty overrated. I played the whole thing, I beat it, and it's pretty overrated, along with another game that's on this list that we'll get to a little later. Go check out my review of Black Myth: Wukong if you really want to understand what's wrong with this game. But the public was just as cocky as the producer of this game with his Game Awards acceptance speech written 2 years earlier or whatever. The public also decided that this game was amazing years before it came out. And the game did come out really good, not great, not amazing, not outstanding, but really good. So let's talk about what's really good about it. Again, check out my review if you want to hear the other side of things as well. However, as much as Veilguard has a nice presentation, Black Myth: Wukong is getting them the fuck out of here. Wukong's art direction is something to behold. Specifically the enemy designs. They are so cool and creepy and menacing in a way that competes with FromSoft themselves. And that's during gameplay. Their cutscenes are also action-packed spectacles that love to showcase size and scale in a way that feels fitting for a take on Journey to the West. But what of the gameplay? Well, a lot of the action game elements are not particularly new, but some of them are presented or utilized in a way that makes them feel more unique. Like, it's not unusual to take on a temporarily more powerful form in action games, but the act of defeating specific enemies and then being able to take their form is really cool. And there are lesser enemies whom you can change into even more briefly to just spout off one of their attacks and then immediately change back. But there are a lot to find and choose from after you've defeated them and captured their soul, allowing you to use their attack. It's almost like Pokemon. Fucked up Chinese mythology Pokemon. And I've already spoken about how cool the enemies and bosses look, but in some of the game's better fights and moments, utilizing all your skills and abilities against those cool bosses is super fun and satisfying as well, and made all the cooler because of the amazing presentation. This game isn't quite a Souls-like, but it is right on the cusp, and the combat is certainly challenging. If you're into that kind of thing, then you'll want to check this out. But moving on, and now prepare to get even more angry. Extremely angry even. Here at number 7 and above Black Myth: Wukong, a game nobody played but everyone hated, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. I'm sorry. This is the truth. This is the most underrated and undervalued game that came out this year. And it was only crucified like it was because it wasn't Batman. Everybody said, Rocksteady, make Batman, or at least something single player and Batman adjacent. And they didn't. And literally the moment we knew they didn't, everyone said the game's trash. Before gameplay, before hands-on, before anything, they said it was trash. Why? Because it's not what we asked for. I'm sorry, but that's not how I operate. I'm just gonna take the game for what it is, what it's trying to do, and judge it on its own merit, not on whether or not it's Batman. And the fact of the matter is, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League is one of, if not the highest quality looter shooters out there. The polish and feel of gameplay is pristine. It has better feedback and movement than all of your favorites. I said it, I don't care. The guns are punchier, the flow is smoother, it fulfills the duties of its genre at a high level, and sets itself apart even by actually having a good story that's genuinely funny and genuinely far more entertaining than any other story you'll get from any game of this genre, and then some. Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League is actually a great game. It didn't deserve what it got, but if the rumors are true, you should all be happy you bullied Rocksteady back into Batman. And you know what? The nerve of you guys. You know how I know everyone's full of shit? I've seen more love, more sticking up for Gotham Knights than Suicide Squad, when Gotham Knights is a vastly inferior game. It's literally not even close. But just because this is Rocksteady and they didn't give you a 5th fucking Batman game, you've gotta throw a tantrum. Get your head out of your own ass and think for yourself. Anyway, go play Suicide Squad and check out my review on it from earlier this year. Hugely underrated game. Oh, and while we're on the topic of underrated and overrated games, let's move to number 6, Astro Bot. It's a great game, but it's pretty overrated at this point. And if you've ever watched my videos, you may know that I love 3D platformers and greatly enjoyed my time with Astro Bot. So again, great game, very deserving of praise. However, we've gone too far. Way too far. I mean, it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Would I have chosen that? Well, clearly I have it here at number 6, so no. But I do agree that it's a better put together and executed game than Black Myth: Wukong. That we can agree on, Game Awards. But I think I understand the psychology behind the hyping of Astro Bot. We just want to communicate to PlayStation that we like this and want more. And if it gets overwhelming acclaim, even if the sales are just decent, they'll have to allow another one to be made. That, and I think this game is very much of the quality of games like Mario, and I think it's a bit of a trying to keep the same energy. Sometimes we overhype certain Mario games, so we've got to do the same here. But mostly I think it's just the first thing. Either way, we're a little overboard, a little less than truthful. But even if Astro Bot in truth isn't a 10 out of 10 game that'll make your head explode, it is great, undoubtedly. And it's on par with all of the best games of its genre, including the Mario ones. In fact, I think it's one of the 3 games that I believe hit the ceiling of the 3D platformer. So yes, absolutely go play Astro Bot. Absolutely say great things. But try to be a little more honest. Act like you've played a game before, you know? But now entering the top 5, we've got a bit of a weird one, because I wouldn't say that it's underrated by those who played it, or even that it wasn't played by a lot of people, but more so that it's looked at a certain way or disregarded to a certain degree if you praise the game. I'm talking about Stellar Blade. Yeah, listen to me. Stellar Blade is a great game with a lot to offer. Cool levels, outstanding combat, and a surprisingly intriguing world lore. It just so happens that the main character, Eve, is super hot. And because sex appeal is such an easy and basic tool for engagement, it's looked down upon as cheap, which I can agree with to some degree. But on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with characters or people looking sexy or flaunting that sex appeal. As it takes place in an art form, I think the cheapness comes if that's all you have to offer, which is not the case for Stellar Blade. I know you might be thinking, dude, your name is Waifu Selector. You definitely like it because she's sexy. Which is fair to think, but also means you have not watched much of my content. Don't get me wrong, Eve is super sexy, and I fuck with that as an aspect of the game because I really have no bone to pick with sexy or unsexy characters in video games. But that's not what I enjoyed the game for, or the only thing enjoyable about it. Otherwise, I could just hop on Rule 34 and call it a day. Why the fuck would I be playing the game? Remember who you're talking to, the only fair human on Earth. No, the truth is that this is just a great pseudo-Souls action game. In fact, the flat-out combat of Stellar Blade is only trumped by a single game on this list that I have yet to talk about. And even then, I could see someone preferring this combat. It's flashy, fluid, responsive, and feels great. There are some awesome boss fights and decent exploration to be had, and that exploration typically results in good rewards. Not to mention, there is just a good pace of action sequences and gameplay shakeups. Oh, also, some great music in here. And as I mentioned, the story and history of the game's world is actually really cool. Honestly, Eve's sexiness is a double-edged sword. Yes, it generates attention for the game, but then it also has people afraid to say they like it or played it, out of fear of being dubbed a gooner or something. I don't know. Play Stellar Blade. It's a great action game that can satisfy not only players of its clear inspiration, Nier, but also fans of OG action games like Devil May Cry. Seriously, it's a great game, and you don't even have to be a gooner to enjoy it. Alright though, time for number 4, and I bet you didn't see this coming. It's The Plucky Squire. This is a randomly really great indie video game. This game has no business being as good as it is. It's paced so frantically in terms of what you're doing. It switches genres and gameplay so often in such a good way. You just never have a chance to be bored with what you're doing. And placed on top of it all is this charmingly little optimistic story to boot. This is an all ages kind of game, so the puzzles never get insane, but there are certainly a couple that'll make you feel clever. And the game is just dripping with creativity all along the way. It's just one of those games that doesn't do much wrong, if anything. Really, at the most, what's wrong with it is that there seem to be more to be added to it, you know? But the game is just so good. It's super cute, really fun. Give it a go sometime. If it even kinda looks like your thing, I'm sure you won't be disappointed. I was very surprised at how good it was. I thought it'd be good, maybe even great, and it went even a little above that. So check out The Plucky Squire. Okay though, here we are. We've reached the home stretch. Top 3 games of the year. And coming in at number 3 is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Pretty much everyone who played this game acknowledged its greatness earlier in the year, but admittedly I don't think that was a ton of people. And you combine that with the fact that by the end of the year, its greatness was being completely ignored because this game came out all the way back in January. Well, I didn't forget. This side-scrolling Metroidvania addition to Prince of Persia was a very great game with good combat, great puzzles, and outstanding platforming, all thrown together in a single stylized package for the modern era. It felt creative and fresh, and you could definitely feel the passion behind the game, that somebody wanted to actually make it, you know? Like a few games on this list, The Lost Crown is pretty challenging, but in some areas it hits a challenging sweet spot, like with its platforming. No kidding, some of its platforming sections are nothing short of 2D platforming perfection. Taken with the entire rest of the game, you just end up with something really cool that stands above most other games from this year, if we're being honest. But okay, now let's talk number 2. The silver medal goes to Tekken 8. Yes, a fighting game, a genre that will never be recognized as having high quality games when compared to other games. But well, what have we learned? That kind of stuff is not how I operate, and Tekken 8 is that good of a game. It wastes no time in being yet another game entering the new era of content-rich fighting games that's beginning. And so it just comes with a lot to offer. Story mode, character arcade ladders, an arcade quest tutorial mode, and even a weird fighting game volleyball called Tekken Ball. And an ever-expanding variety of customization that lets you make every character into your wackiest fantasy, or force them to cosplay as other characters from across the media landscape. All that and the ways to play are great, but of course the heart and soul is the fighting itself. And Tekken 8 has great fighting, and characters that are simple to learn despite Tekken being a very deep fighting game that requires no small amount of awareness. But through general responsiveness and whatnot, the game is able to mitigate things like mistaken inputs and not require insane precision to execute just about anything, which is helpful with onboarding. Also, the inclusion of the heat mechanic to me is a welcome one and an insane offensive tool that keeps fights fresh and players on their toes. I honestly think Tekken 8 is one of the best modern fighting games in recent memory. Even compared to Street Fighter 6, which I scored similarly, I kinda give the edge to Tekken 8. It's just an outstanding game that is a reflection of the continued growth of Tekken's reach and deserves to grow further. If you like fighting games at all, check out Tekken 8. But alright, here we are everybody, the big finale, Waifu Collector's Game of the Year. The number 1 game of 2024 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I must say, I did not believe I'd enjoy this game as much as I did or think it would be this good, even when it kinda looked the part in trailers, because I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan and I've been burned by the franchise before. Final Fantasy 16 looked incredible in the lead up to release, but in the end was still a good game, but just that, a good game. Even the predecessor of Rebirth, FF7 Remake, while it was a really good game, still kinda disappointed me. It was much more rigid and closed off a game than I'd anticipated, both in terms of world traversal scope and gameplay. And I'd come to learn that that's just kinda how Final Fantasy games are. They're pretty restrictive RPGs, which ironically is not very RPG of them. So I didn't buy into trailer hype when Rebirth was coming out, because I'd probably only be disappointed again. But once I played it, oh my god, it's so fucking good. The only thing is that a lot of the game is story, and the story is cool and spends all of its time raising more and more questions, only for it to then provide you with no answers by the end. So it almost nullifies a lot of the story intrigue because nothing comes of it. And I get that there's gonna be a third game that answers those questions, presumably, duh, but you should have answered something and then raised new questions. Instead, this game only raises questions and answers nothing. But that's honestly my only gripe, because everything else is fire, even other aspects of the story. Like, taken for a moment to moment, it's actually amazing. And the character work is some of the best out there, up there with Baldur's Gate 3. Like, you will fall in love with the party in FF7 Rebirth. Everyone's written so well, and writing and direction has improved from the first game, and while the first game already had one of the greatest core combat systems ever in my opinion, Rebirth just makes it better. Then they give you more freedom in every regard. More party composition freedom, materia freedom, better side quests and mini games, fights and areas, an actual fucking RPG, and a damn good one. Not to mention, among the 1 million minigames present in this game, there are a couple that could seriously just be their own games, no fucking joke. I really do just fucking love this game, it's incredible. I hesitate to call it one of my favorite games ever because it did just come out earlier this year, but dude, it might be. What we do know is that it is certainly my game of the year. Hands down. Go play the first one, FF7 Remake, then play this one. You'll need that story background to fully enjoy this. But dude, it's so good. Anyway though, there you have it. The top 10 games of 2024, otherwise known as Waifu Billector's fair list of great games. I know you disagree with everything. I know I was supposed to pretend Wukong was better than it was and Suicide Squad was a lot worse than it was, but instead I came on here and I told the truth. Like I said, if you're interested in hearing more about any of these games, check out my fair review playlist. There's a link in the description. And if you don't see the game you're looking for with its own video, watch the 2024 games review in that playlist. That'll have what you're looking for. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. It's been a nice gaming year. Leave your comments with your thoughts. I'm sure you've already typed something angry about how stupid and wrong I am. That's cool. But while you're at it, why not give the video a like and subscribe to the channel? Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. Either way though, that's all for now. And until next time or next year, I am Waifu Billector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai and I enjoyed 2024 games. Goodbye.